The dust rolled across the ground like a living creature that afternoon, swirling around boots, broken crates, and rusted wagon wheels in the forgotten frontier town of Clearwater Ridge. It was the kind of place where justice came only to those who could afford it, and mercy was found only in the prayers of the desperate. That day, desperation had a face, young, pale, bruised, and trembling. Her name was Alara Briggs. In her arms, swaddled against her chest, lay her newborn baby, barely 2 weeks old, crying softly into the thin fabric of her torn dress. People gathered in clusters, whispering, chuckling, nudging one another as if they were attending a cheap circus show. Men with whiskey-soaked breath. Women who had seen too much and could do nothing to stop what was coming. Kids perched on barrels, watching the spectacle with wide, curious eyes. In the center of the dirt square stood a wooden platform, hastily built but sturdy enough to hold the weight of cruelty. And on that platform, Alara. Her wrists were bound with coarse rope. Her right cheek carried the purple memory of a bruise. That morning she had been dragged from the tiny shack she once shared with her late husband. He had died in a mine collapse 3 months earlier, leaving her with nothing but funeral debt, a newborn, and a landlord who only understood coin. When she couldn't pay, he sold her to the one man in town who reveled in the suffering of others, Dale Riker. Riker was a large, oily man whose hat barely hid the greed in his small eyes. He climbed onto the platform and lifted his hands dramatically toward the crowd. Listen up, folks. Today's offering is a rare one. A young, strong woman who can work, clean, cook, whatever you need. And she comes with a newborn baby. Both for one price only. He paced in front of her like she was livestock. Who wants to start the bidding? Alara tried to steady her breathing, whispering to the child in her arms, "It's all right, my little star. Mommy's here." But even she didn't believe it fully. She could feel her future slipping away, falling into the hands of whatever man would claim her like a tool or an animal. The baby stirred, letting out a tiny cry. Alara swallowed hard, her stomach twisting. A voice in the crowd yelled, $10. Another shouted, 12, 15. Each number stabbed her deeper than any knife could. She felt humiliation, fear, and a raw helplessness that squeezed her heart until she could hardly breathe. She thought of running, but the ropes burned against her skin every time she moved. She thought of screaming, but she doubted anyone would care. Riker grinned as the bids rose. "Come on, folks, she's worth double what you're offering. Look at her, good bones, healthy enough, hard-working, I hear. And the baby, well, you can decide what to do with it." A ripple of ugly chuckles passed through the crowd. Alara closed her eyes, praying silently for someone, anyone, to step in. But Clearwater Ridge was a town where the strong took what they wanted, and the weak got swallowed whole. Her baby whimpered again. She kissed the top of the tiny head. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," she whispered, tears slipping down her dusty cheeks. "I tried." Just as Riker raised his hand to declare the next bid, a sound carried through the air, a distant, rhythmic clopping of hooves. At first, nobody paid attention. But the sound grew louder, closer, firmer. The townsfolk turned toward the main road, narrowing their eyes through the shifting dust. A horse emerged, massive, dark chestnut, its coat glistening in the dying sunlight. And on its back rode a tall, broad-shouldered man with a leather coat, a heavy beard, and eyes sharper than a mountain hawk's. A long, hand-forged rifle rested in the saddle holster. He rode with the calm confidence of someone who had survived wilderness storms and unfriendly men alike. Silas Kane. Most people in Clearwater Ridge had heard his name. A recluse. A hunter. A man who lived high in the mountains alone, rarely coming down except for essentials. Some claimed he'd once fought off a pack of wolves with his bare hands. Others whispered he had buried more than one outlaw in unmarked forest graves. Nobody really knew, which made him all the more dangerous. Silas brought the horse to a slow stop at the edge of the square. His gaze swept the crowd before resting on the platform. On the woman. On the newborn. And something shifted in his expression, something dark, something protective, something ancient. He swung off the horse with quiet precision. The dust settled around his boots as he stepped forward. Riker squinted. Well, the mountain ghost himself. "You here to place a bid, Silas?" Silas didn't answer. He walked until he stood directly beneath the platform. The crowd parted, as if compelled by the raw, silent threat in the air. Alara's breath caught. She had never seen him before, but something about him made her feel safe and terrified at the same time. Silas raised his head slightly and spoke in a voice smooth but edged with steel. "Let her go." Riker barked a laugh. "Now why would I do that? She's mine. Bought Farron." Silas lifted his rifle, cocked it. A single sharp click rang through the square like a lightning strike. The crowd froze. Silas's eyes locked onto Riker's. "I'm only going to say it once." Riker swallowed, but he forced a smirk. "You think I'm scared of?" Silas fired. The bullet hit the wood an inch from Riker's boot, splintering it. Riker stumbled back, eyes wide with shock. Silas lowered the rifle again, this time aiming directly at him. "I don't make threats, Riker. I make decisions. Now drop the rope." Riker stared, chest heaving, then finally dropped the rope binding Alara's wrists. It hit the wooden platform with a dull thud. Alara gasped as blood rushed back into her hands. She held her baby tighter, unable to speak. Silas extended his hand to her. "Come with me." She hesitated. I don't even know you." "You don't need to," he said softly. "You just need to know you're not staying here." Behind him, Riker snarled, "You can't just take her." Silas didn't even turn around. "Watch me." He guided Alara down from the platform with surprising gentleness for a man so rugged. She winced as her feet hit the ground. Silas placed a steady hand on her back. "You and the baby ride with me." Before they reached the horse, Riker shouted, "She owes debts. She belongs." Silas spun around so fast the crowd flinched. "She belongs to no one." His voice cracked like thunder. "And if any man here thinks otherwise, step forward." Nobody moved. Silas helped Alara onto his horse, lifting her as if she weighed nothing. He mounted behind her, securing her safely with one arm as he took the reins with the other. Riker backed up as Silas glared at him. "If you come after her, you won't make it back." Silas dug his heels in, and the horse surged forward. The crowd parted instantly, terrified to be anywhere near the trajectory of the mountain man's fury. They rode fast, leaving the town behind. Wind and dust whipped around them, but Alara clung to her baby and to the arm around her waist, the first solid thing she'd felt in days. Hours passed. Mountains rose ahead, their dark silhouettes sharp against the fading sky. Silas slowed only when the town lights disappeared entirely behind them. Finally, after miles of riding, they reached a small clearing near a mountain stream. Silas dismounted and offered his hand again. "You all right?" I think so," she whispered, though tears welled in her eyes. He helped her down and guided her to a fallen log by the fire pit he quickly built. Sparks danced upward as flames began to crackle. He boiled water, prepared dried meat, and checked on the baby, his large hands surprisingly gentle. Alara watched him, bewildered. "Why?" she whispered. "Why help me?" He looked into the flames for a long moment. "Because I've seen enough wrong done in this world. And because once, someone saved me when I thought I didn't deserve saving." She stared at him, sensing a story he wasn't ready to tell. Over the next few days, Silas brought them to his cabin, a small, warm shelter tucked deep between towering pines and snow-fed streams. Alara slept for the first time in weeks without fear. Her baby regained strength, fed, and slept peacefully. Silas hunted, chopped wood, and made herbal mixtures to ease the baby's cough. Sometimes he spoke. Sometimes he disappeared into silence. But he was protective, steady, and always near. And slowly, Alara found herself laughing again, quietly at first, then freely, like the sound belonged in that cabin. But trouble has a way of finding the innocent. One stormy afternoon, Silas spotted 3 riders approaching, Riker's men, armed and furious. He pushed Alara inside. "Stay down. Don't open the door." She held her baby close, heart pounding. Silas stepped into the rain, rifle in hand. The men circled. "Riker wants the woman back," one sneered. Silas cocked the rifle. "Not happening." Guns raised. Horses reared. Rain hammered the ground. Silas fired first. A rider fell. Chaos erupted. But Silas moved like a force of nature, precise, unyielding, deadly. Within moments, 2 men lay bleeding. The third fled in terror. Silas didn't chase him. He wanted him to deliver a message. When Alara ran out, fear in her eyes, he shook his head. "I'm fine. But this isn't over." She trembled. "What do we do?" "We go back," he said. "And finish this." Together they rode back to Clearwater Ridge. The townsfolk watched in silence as Silas dismounted, dragged Riker out of the saloon, and threw him into the dirt. You hurt her. You tried to sell her. You hunted her. Silas's voice shook the air. The next time you or anyone else lays a hand on her, I'll bury you myself. Riker scrambled away, defeated, humiliated, powerless. And with that, Silas turned to Alara. You're free. But she looked at him with something deeper than relief. I don't want to leave, she whispered. Silas froze. I want to stay, she continued softly. With you. If you'll have us. His expression softened, slowly, carefully, as if the feeling was unfamiliar but welcome. You can stay, he murmured. For as long as you want. Months passed. Spring warmed the mountains. The cabin filled with light, laughter, and the tiny footsteps of a growing baby learning to walk. Silas carved a cradle, taught Alara to fish, and watched her bloom into the strongest, bravest version of herself. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the peaks and the baby giggled in Silas's arms, Alara stood in the doorway, smiling through tears of gratitude. On the day she had been auctioned with her newborn, she thought her life had ended. But then a lone mountain man appeared with a rifle. And saved not just her life, but her future.